the economy is changing at a lightning fast pace. With the internet added to it, it's technology plus this huge amount of interconnectivity that's happening. And what this interconnectivity has done, you get rewarded financially. Your success hinges on how true you are to yourself. That's a really powerful principle if we're talking about entrepreneurship, if we're talking about borderless living, if we're talking about cultivating a life where we can pursue our passions and live a life that is as much as possible in tune with what we love and what we enjoy doing.
Welcome to the Borderless Podcast, your guide to traveling, investing, and living beyond borders, where we talk about living the life that you want to live, where you want to live it. From beautiful San Miguel de Allende, smack in the middle of Mexico, with your hosts, Jonathan Lockwood and James Guzman.
Welcome to the Borderless Podcast, traveling, investing, and living beyond borders. This is the podcast that's all about breaking through those unfortunate borders. Sometimes the borders are international or geographical, and sometimes they're psychological. We're going to talk about that with our guest today. My name's Jonathan Lockwood. I'm here with James Guzman. What's happening, James?
I'm doing all right, doing pretty well. How about yourself?
It's a little warm, just a little warm today, so I was thinking about getting a fan, but I thought it's going to make noise on the podcast.
Right. No,
so I better not.
Yeah, it feels great to me.
Better not. I'm kind of anxious. I got a lot of work to do, and I'm taking off for the weekend, so let's get right to it. I'm excited about our guest here.
Yeah, well, before we get into the guest, I'd like to give appreciation to a few people out there. We have had a couple reviews come through to the podcast in the last couple weeks. One is from Kevin that we had on a couple weeks ago from the
Freedom Lovin' Podcast.
Exactly. And he says, I really enjoyed James and Jonathan's show. Each episode is packed with solid info on how to live more freely. These two are clearly professionals, but also very personable. And I am a big believer in the borderless philosophy. So that's good. Thanks for that, Kevin. And then another one was from Chris. And he says, Jonathan and James have a wealth of knowledge regarding all topics relevant to living outside of your home borders. Taxes, investing, location-independent businesses, etc. In addition, they host very relevant and knowledgeable guests to discuss all these topics. Please keep up the great work, gents. So thanks to both of you guys. That helps us, as far as people finding us on iTunes. And then even more importantly, I'd like to help the people that have donated to help keep this show going and keep this show possible. We got some people today, Tom Sailors, Luke Crowley, Wendy Fingers, Jamie Marie Kuntz, and Mark Peters have all given money to keep the show going, so we very much appreciate that.
Thank you very much, guys. We appreciate it. So our guest today on the Borderless Podcast is Chris Delamo of redpillphilosophy.com, which is subtitled Awaken to Your Greatness. Now, Chris Delamo was born and raised in Miami, Florida. He went through the system like everyone else for the majority of his life until about 2009. While spending too much time watching documentaries on YouTube, he realized there's more to reality than meets the eye. He began to question the nature of the two-party political system, gradually became a libertarian, and now agreeing largely with anarchy voluntarism. Around early 2012, he started Red Pill Philosophy, a YouTube channel and blog with over 8 million views and 40,000 subscribers. That's huge. Aside from this, he also does freelance work in writing and videography. On his blog, some of the main topics of interest include anti-feminism, problems with modern schooling, spirituality, and consciousness. Welcome, Chris Delamo, to the Borderless Podcast.
Hey, man, very, very glad to be here. Thanks a lot for having me on.
Okay, so I'm gonna make I'm gonna jump to a conclusion here, and I'm gonna jump to the conclusion that most people who know about you, Chris, probably know about you, obviously from your YouTube page, which is huge, but also from your videos that got a lot of attention. You'd call it anti-feminism, and I want to talk to you about that. I would say anti-nutso feminism, anti-radical feminism. Is that correct? Is that how you think most people have found you?
Yeah, I think that you got to be very specific when you're talking about these terms, feminism, anti-feminism, or radical feminism. I do think that the average feminist has good intentions. The average sort of mainstream, yeah, I'm a feminist, and the people who kind of just call themselves feminists because it's the politically correct thing to say, I think most of them are relatively sane people. They're not calling for a lot of the more extreme radical madness that the radical feminists are calling for. So, yeah, if you want to be specific, I'm anti the radical feminists, the one who say things like all men are rapists, or the ones who push these deeply distorted, long debunked false statistics about the so-called rape culture, or about the so-called pay gap between men and women, which has been largely, not entirely debunked at this point. The radical feminists talk about the conspiracy of the patriarchy and that there's a handful of men in a smoke-filled room and oppressing women. And so you got to be very specific. But that, my anti-feminism videos have been some of the most popular ones that I've created. So definitely a lot of people have found me through those.
Yeah, you know what I think is interesting about your channel is you kind of, like we said in your bio, you cover all these different subjects. And I think that's pretty cool. A lot of people, they want to find their specific niche of a niche of a niche in order to make money. But I think, maybe a different approach is just to be yourself, follow things that you think are interesting, and people will find you that have, kind of similar beliefs, and that's worked for you, right?
Yeah, and that's a really powerful principle if we're talking about entrepreneurship, if we're talking about borderless living, if we're talking about cultivating a life where we can pursue our passions and live a life that is as much as possible in tune with what we love and what we enjoy doing. I mean, the last situation anybody wants to be in is in that position where you have to work a job that you hate. And, the cliched phrase is, if you love your job, you'll never work another day in your life. And as cliched as that is, I think it's very much worth pursuing a life like that, in a world where so many people have to resort to prescription drugs because they're not genuinely fulfilled in their lives. So they have to get a pill to chemically alter the state of their minds to overcome depression or anxiety. I think that there are more holistic ways to go about dealing with these internal problems. And the work that we do, the place you spend 40 plus hours a week at, we can't overlook that in terms of how it affects your health, how it affects your life. If you spend 40 hours a week at a place you hate going to, a job you completely hate, don't be surprised when it makes you feel so bad that you have to find ways to, in a sense, medicate the sense of dissatisfaction you have with your life. So, yeah, it's difficult. One of the things that I've learned, especially in this internet age, I think a lot of your viewers have to realize that the economy is changing at a lightning fast pace. Mm-hmm. And we live in this internet technological age where technology is evolving so quickly that every day there's a new freaking Kickstarter for some crazy thing some guy invented in his garage or some huge corporation came up with or whatever. There's so much technological advancement going on that with the internet added to it, it's technology plus this huge amount of interconnectivity that's happening. Mm-hmm. And what this interconnectivity has done, this is what Seth Godin calls the connection economy. And essentially what it is, it's there's this growing economy that exists where you get rewarded financially. Your success hinges on how true you are to yourself. And that might sound kind of airy-fairy, and it might not sound very concrete, and it might sound kind of silly, but that's going back to what your point was about the way that I've developed my channel and the way that I don't stick to one topic only. I just focus on doing what I enjoy doing. I only try to make videos on things that I enjoy. So if I want to make a video on feminism, I'll make a video on feminism. If I want to make a video on general self-help topics, I'll make a video on general self-help topics. If I want to do a video on spirituality and consciousness and quantum physics, I'll just freaking do that. And although it's going to disenfranchise some audience members, there's always going to be some people who don't like some of the topics you cover. That's the thing. I think you need to transcend this view that you have to chase every last penny in order to cater and grovel to every customer. That mainstream, got to make every penny, got to make, can't offend anybody. That model of running a business is really changing, especially in the internet age. I'll give you guys a good example. Recently, there's a UK-based company called Protein World. And Protein World released a series of bus stop advertisements throughout the subways and bus stops of London. And the ad basically showed a beautiful female swimsuit model. She's on the cover, and then next to her, there's a caption that reads, "Are you beach body ready?" And okay, so basically they sell protein. They're a health fitness company. So here's this ad that's designed to get people interested in purchasing their protein for beach for the summer. The problem is that the crazy feminists got angry because they said that ad, number one, it supposedly objectifies women, and number two, they said that it fat shames, that the ad fat shames. And so a whole shitstorm began to brew, and a bunch of crazy feminists began to put graffiti all over their ads. They began to tear down their ads throughout the city. What in an older economy, in an earlier age, what would have been described as a PR nightmare was actually capitalized on by the owner of that company, Protein World. Instead of kowtowing to the feminists and the PC police and the social justice warriors, instead of groveling and begging, please like my company, please don't be offended, all chasing the last little penny, the owner actually had some testicles. He stood strong. And he refused to apologize. He refused to kowtow. He did not give in. He even like debated feminists on his Twitter profile through the company's main profile. He would like call feminists fat and jealous. I mean, that is like, you don't do that. You're not supposed to do that in the corporate America model of how to make money and have a successful business. Yet here he was combating, standing strong for what he believed in, not catering to the political correct crowd in order to save every last penny. And you know what happened? His company in the span of about a week made £1 million, euro pounds, in the span of about a week, because you know what? Who supported his message and were tired of these fucking politically correct, self-hating morons. People got up in arms to support the company, to support them, to buy their products, not even because they needed to buy protein, just to say, screw you, you politically correct people. Now, that is a fantastic case study in this new world that we live in, where you no longer have to compromise yourself. You no longer have to self-sacrifice your potential. And this is reflective not just of what big companies like Protein World did, but what you as an individual should be doing in terms of the job that you want to have. Are you working the job that you actually love? Do you compromise? Do you work a job you hate because it's comfortable and maybe your parents wanted you to do it? Are you still self-sacrificing? You no longer have to self-sacrifice. If you put in the effort, if you truly commit, there's a really good chance, especially in this modern technological internet economy, that you can cultivate a life that you enjoy, and you don't have to go mindlessly work for somebody else at a job you're not passionate about, the way the mainstream school system essentially conditions you.
Chris, what you're talking about right now strikes such a chord with me. And it reminds me of a conversation I had with somebody recently. I told him that we were going to have you on. He likes your videos a lot. And yet he said, I can't understand it. Why is this guy, he's just coming on the video, just talking to people, sharing his stuff. And all of a sudden, all these people, and I'm like, why? You don't get it. This is the beauty of it. The thing that you just described. When will there be a legitimate, seriously taken presidential candidate, for instance, in the United States, who looks in the camera and says, fuck you. This is who I am. You don't like it? Don't vote for me. So this honesty that you just lay right out there, and now and then you have fun with it, and you get a little over the top for fun. But honestly, people get the sense, if they want the abundance of your videos, that you're being you, and that in a world where most people are not them, that does stand out, and it resonates with people, I think.
It absolutely does. And it's kind of interesting because in a way, we're in a position right now, for whatever reason, I guess people have been fed lies for so long that they desperately crave the truth. They desperately crave authenticity. Yeah. So we're in a point right now, and I don't know if this is just part of a natural fluctuating cycle. Like for a few decades, people want to be lied to, and then they get tired of it because the consequences of being deceived, in the ass, and then they start craving authenticity, and then they get tired of authenticity. They want to be bullshitted. I don't know if it's a cycle, but right now we are in the authenticity phase of this modern economy. And the irony is that, you can really be financially rewarded for being authentic. Like being authentic, isolated from making money, but believe it or not, we live in a time where raw authenticity sells, and it sells really well.
Yeah, and I wonder what you think about this as well. I've heard that. Well, I kind of see that when people talk about things that might be kind of uncomfortable for them to talk about, that usually happens to be, that's they're most successful at that, whether it's a blog post or a video or something like that. And you said that you make videos about things that you want to make videos about, but I wonder, have you, done videos about things that you're like, oh man, this is something that I don't know if I should put out there, or maybe you're a little nervous about it, and those happen to be the most successful?
Yeah, and it still happens to this day. And it's happened to me before that I've released videos that people hated and that I lost a ton of subscribers for. And here's the lesson that I learned from that I think your audience would appreciate, is that for every subscriber you lose, or client or customer, whatever it is, for every potential client that you lose because you decided to stand strong on your values and your convictions, you're probably going to get more than double that many in terms of either new converts who appreciate how firm and strong you stand on your principles, or at least your current clientele or subscribers or audience or whatever it is. They will see, wow, this guy really believes in his stuff. He's willing to put his opinions out there in spite of the fact that he just got 50% dislikes on that video, and they're going to become that much more diehard fans, or whatever it is, not just diehard fans. So again, the case in protein world, the guy stood strong in his principles. It was an opportunity for him to either kowtow in fear of the rejection and the criticisms he was getting. His business exploded. He got a bunch of free marketing, free press. And look at the fruits. Look at the power of standing strong on what you believe in, even in an economy. People say the customer is always right. And look, I'm all for it, great, excellent customer service, but sometimes the customer is just retarded. In fact, that's like my model. The customer is always retarded because, and I don't really believe that. I know that sounds horrible, but I don't really believe they're retarded. But in an age where corporations and companies have been just neutering themselves in terms of trying to kowtow to every want and desire of a customer in order to chase every last little penny, it's gotten to the point where some customers become abusive. I used to work at a grocery store. That's right. I'm trying to work at a grocery store again. I used to work at a grocery store, public supermarkets down here in South Florida. And there were customers who would come in and just be totally obnoxious, totally rude to workers. And as a worker, I could not defend myself because the customer is always right. So I had to sit there and be dehumanized because the management said, listen, we need that guy's pennies. We need every last dollar he spends. Even if he comes in here and he has an attitude and he treats you guys like garbage, practically insults you, you need to take it. That kind of sacrificing any integrity or honor or decency, all for chasing the last buck, a rat race to the bottom, that I believe leads to a place that is nowhere near as good as where if you decided to have some integrity, some honor, and actually stand for more than just the fucking pennies, for the dollars. There's nothing wrong with making money, But look at these examples, whether it's my YouTube channel or whether it's Protein World, or you have these rising, thought leaders like Seth Godin or Gary Vaynerchuk, entrepreneurs who are telling you, and these people are successful. They're at the cutting edge of many economic industries, and they're saying that you can no longer be a passive, stand for nothing, faceless corporation that just tries to suck in money. You can do it if you want to, but we are beginning to transition, as Seth Godin calls it, into the connection economy. And in this economy, companies and customers and communities are forming together almost like tribes. And Seth Godin even refers to it as tribes. And tribes are where like-minded people with similar values support and negotiate and interact with each other. And in this tribal new type of a culture that's arising, you don't have to compromise your values for the customer that doesn't agree with the way you do business. That customer can just go somewhere else, and you as a company can continue to cater to the customers who do reflect your values. And because they see that you stand for the same things they stand in and that you stand firm, they're going to become die-hard followers. They're not just going to be customers that show up once a week. They're going to be following you on Twitter, following you on Facebook, on Instagram. They're going to be retweeting your stuff. They're going to be there if in case you ever get into a legal battle. You're going to have hundreds of people show up because you're not a corporation anymore. You're actually a human being. You're actually something that matters to people. And that is arguably more valuable than the extra $100 or so a month you would have gotten from that customer who was a complete dickhead, or from those overweight, self-hating feminists who got angry at Protein World.
Yeah. I love what you're saying there, and that's kind of what we're trying to do here is, create a kind of a network of people that want to kind of live beyond their borders. And I think one thing that is really great about having your own business, about entrepreneurship, is that you can pick and choose your customers. It's a two-way street to work with somebody. A lot of people don't realize that, especially if you've only worked, like you were saying, in a grocery store, or you had a job from someone else where you have to just take shit from the customers all the time. The customer's not always right. It's a two-way street, and sometimes you have to fire your clients. And, they have this 80-20 rule, that 20% of your clients bring 80% of your revenue. So, if you concentrate on those people, and, it doesn't mean that you just, dismiss people if they aren't giving you a lot of money. But, if it's just not a good situation with that person, it's not working out, then just say, look, we're not good to work together. You know what I mean? So I think that's one of the good things about having your own company.
I totally 100% agree. Yeah, that's a huge one. And it seems to be, it kind of goes back to one of my original points. It seems to be reflective. Like if you're in a position where instead of working for another company where you have to shut your mouth in case there's an annoying or rude customer and you have to kind of deal with it because you're not in control of the business, the alternative to that is maybe you have your own business, or maybe you have your own individual clients if it's some kind of freelance work. Mm-hmm. And in that case, like you said, you can pick and choose your clients, and you can, although there is a pro and con. You do have to make a bit of a sacrifice. If there's a client who's rude or something and you refuse to do business with them, it is going to suck because you're not going to be able to get the money that you would have anticipated getting from that client. But I think you have to look at the long term. And I think if you look at the long term, you want to create a business where you're interacting with clients who reflect your values, who you're not going to have bitterness or arguments with. That's just a healthier relationship overall. And I think it feels better too. I think it feels better to not, make those sacrifices on your principles and on your values. We live in a world where we think principles and values are just, romanticized nonsense, but it matters. And, in this modern rising connection economy, I think that there's a lot of examples of how this is the way to go. This is the way to structure your business.
You're listening to the Borderless Podcast. We are talking with Chris Delamo of redpillphilosophy.com, Awaken to Your Greatness. He has an amazing YouTube channel and blog with over 8 million views and 40,000 subscribers. One of the things James and I were talking about, Chris, before you came on, we were looking at your bio, and this is not the typical bio we get. Usually what we get are degrees and a bunch of basically like a resume or something. And what this bio is of a person who had an awakening, it appears to me, and I identify with it strongly. So red pill philosophy, this is sort of a tip of the hat to the Matrix situation, take the red pill, take the blue pill, right? So what was that awakening for you? Tell us about that.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, it was in about around the year 2009 that I got sucked into the rabbit hole of the internet. And I think most of us have had those moments where you're just kind of YouTubing around or Googling around and you find an interesting idea. And the next thing you know, you get sucked into this rabbit hole where you're clicking link after link after link. And that's essentially what happened to me. I stumbled upon a few alternative documentaries on YouTube that provided alternative perspectives to things, mainly about the nature of government. I stumbled upon a couple Alex Jones documentaries, one of which was The Obama Deception. And that was a powerful film. I don't agree with all of it, but his general perspective, the general idea that the Republican and the Democrat Party are essentially the same thing. There's no real difference between the two. That was a powerful realization for me because I was still stuck in the Republican-Democrat paradigm at the time where I thought that I had to either pick one or the other. Even though I didn't fully agree with the Republicans or agree with the Democrats, I felt like I had to choose one, right? Because that's the only way anything ever happens. So, yeah, and it goes to show you how disempowered my mentality was back then. And some people have said that voting is a suggestion box for slaves. In a sense, when you vote, you're essentially begging very powerful institutions to change society in the way that you'd like it to be. And so I kind of woke up to the nature of voting and government, and I basically realized that there's basically no change is going to come, at least the change I'd like to see in my own personal life. None of that's going to come by voting. It just isn't. So I began a gradual process, I guess you can call it awakening, where I began to just delve deeply into alternative information. Around the year 2010, me and a long-term girlfriend of mine, we broke up. And that was another major catalyst for me because I'd become very dependent on her emotionally. And I kind of realized, because we had been together for 7 years, I kind of realized how little I had been working on myself as an individual throughout those 7 years. All I was thinking about was, oh, I love you, sweetie, and we're together. And it was just, you're so bent on, fostering the relationship that is almost like sometimes you can forget to like foster yourself. And that was the case with me. So it was around 2010 that I started to get into really heavy into like self-development, self-help circles and ideas. And I began to really work on myself, work on things like drive, commitment, discipline, definitely social stuff like breaking out of my shell, asserting myself. And since then, I've just been pretty much obsessed with, because I've seen the benefits of working hard to improve yourself, to actualize your dreams and your goals and overcoming your fears. I've seen the benefits. So I'm very passionate about that. And it's really, it's reminiscent of that archetype of the red pill from the movie The Matrix, where Neo has to take the red pill. And the red pill is to, you'll be forced to face the truth, the harsh reality of things. It implies that you're willing to confront what's difficult in spite of how many challenges may come as a result, because of your commitment to what's true, because of how it affects your life, how it affects your perception of the world. So that, as opposed to taking the blue pill, which is just more denial, more self-delusion, which ultimately just disempowers you. And I think it leads you to the same place I was prior to my so-called awakening, where I actually thought that voting was going to change something substantial around me. So red pill philosophy, the little slogan for it is awaken to your greatness. And that's basically what it is. It's about obliterating the bullshit that people are fed, obliterating all the bullshit, and then showing them what is true behind those lies, behind that propaganda. And to me, when you know what's true about the world, you're better prepared to navigate through the world. If you live in deceit, your choices, your actions, your thoughts, everything is going to reflect a misinterpretation of what's actually true. On the other hand, if you know what's true about the world, then your thoughts, your words, and your actions will reflect that, and they'll be more in alignment with what's actually happening in the world, and thus you'll be more prepared to take it on. So that's the gist of what Red Pill philosophy is all about.
Yeah, that's great. You know, I'm really fascinated by this waking up thing. You know, a lot of people have this time in their life, and they describe it similarly in that they feel like before that moment, you know, that they were kind of asleep and just drudging along, and then they realize that a lot of things that they believed in the past were not true. And you know, I've always been kind of very interested in what causes this, what it actually means, because what I think is funny is that a lot of people label that differently, and then they come to different conclusions. Like, for instance, I was talking to this lady here in town who is a ayahuasca shaman. And she has this, you know, waking up, and she talks about how many people have woken up, and it's very similar to what I would call waking up, but we come on to completely different conclusions, you know. But it just, there's a certain point in time. It's normally, I find there's some sort of a traumatic thing that happens, whether it's they lose a lot of money, they break up with their family, break up with their significant other, or whatever it is, and they actually have to re-examine the the principles that they've been living by, because it's not working anymore. And then all of a sudden, it's kind of like, I have tons and tons to learn. Like, they just feel like they've been a moron their entire life. So I think it's a really fascinating phenomenon that, you know, maybe it should be examined more by psychologists or something, because if you can cause that in people, you know, if you can get people to actually wake up and realize that a lot of the things that they believe aren't true, then that would really just change society. You know?
Well, that's the problem. Is somebody they have to do it themselves.
Yeah,
is the
absolutely.
problem, and that as a person who was in a religious cult. I was a Jehovah's Witness until I was 38, knocking on people's doors since I was maybe 5, right. Trying not only to change them to a political viewpoint, but trying to tell them their entire life foundation was incorrect and they needed to embrace mine. I'm tired of fucking trying to talk people into shit.
Right.
You know, I don't want to do that anymore. And Chris, you're killing me softly with every word that you speak. I mean, this concept of just not being willing to eat the shit anymore and just sort of, you know, I hate to use these cliches, but they're all that come to mind. Speaking truth to power, the emperor wears no clothes, all of that stuff. But in a minute, we want to come back and talk to you a little bit about you personally, some of the things you've done, what your plans are for the future. We'd like to get some insight into that. But we got to give a little bit of a moment to our sponsor. Today's Borderless podcast is brought to you by The Condescending Group, an online resource for those who prefer tingly group validation over boring objective reality. As we told you a couple of weeks ago, our friends at The Condescending Group had created a new video course called The Piggish White Heterosexual Male. And we're surprised to say it's been met with remarkable success. And what's been sweet is that it's not only benefiting women, but also giving males with low self-esteem and validation issues an exhilarating environment in which to express their submarine deep self-loathing. In view of this, the Condescending Group has just released The Piggish White Heterosexual Male 2, which from a glance at the video titles looks every bit as bile-filled and stimulating. For instance, there's Man Equals Rapist, period. That sounds good. Unjustly accused male rapists gain from the experience. Then there is Annihilating the Penis, which is also, by the way, released in German as Wienerschlotter, and a related video, How to Secretly Chemically Castrate the Men in Your Workplace. Anyway, say what you will, but this new anti-male video course has really caught on, and I have to really appreciate the diversity of opinion offered. I mean, while some advocate the mass murder of all males, some only want to hormonally alter males into females, so all perspectives are tolerated. Go to thecondescendinggroup.com to get in on this video course today. The Condescending Group, they care more than you. So you're listening to the Borderless podcast. Our guest today, Chris Delamo of RedPillPhilosophy.com, subtitled Awaken to Your Greatness. This guy's cool, huh, James?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm enjoying this conversation.
I don't remember when I first saw one of his videos. I don't know, maybe it was a year ago or something like that. Mm-hmm. But, you know, the video, our reason for having Chris on is not to talk about anti-feminism specifically, but you saw a video. James sent me a video last week that was entitled Quit Your Job, Do What You Love. And you've touched on this, but one of the things I appreciated, the points that you made is, look, is it just sort of trendy to take this position of leaving your corporate job? Or why do you really have such a negative opinion of it? And so I thought maybe you could share that. Do you see that as a trend? People wanting to get away from their corporate job only because it's a trend and not because they really care to?
I think it could be a little bit of both, but I think there seems to be an overall awakening going on. And it might be coinciding with the internet. But, they say it's the best of times, it's the worst of times. So although on one level you see the internet, you see, the Republican Party converting to libertarianism in a way that you basically have never seen in decades. You see the internet, you see videos, documentaries, conspiracy documentaries, or any documentary with an alternative perspective than the mainstream media pushes out. And they have millions of views and they're viral. And you've got YouTube channels like Vice News, relatively alternative perspective, or you have RT, which some say is just run by Putin. But either way, you see this kind of change going on where I think that especially in America, for so many decades now, the average person spent their life in this system. It's a system. It's a machine of almost unthinking, just follow orders, do what you're told. It begins with parenting, then it translates when you go into the school system. And the mainstream public school system is all about conformity. Do what you're told, sit still, wear the uniform. The uniform itself, uni implies single or one. Form, it forms you, conforms you. So the uniform conforms you to a single standard. You're not an individual who can come into school with your own, vibrant, fashion style, or whatever the hell you decided to wear that day. Instead, you have to put on this uniform, this school uniform that collectivizes you like you're a robot on an assembly line, like all the other students. Sit still, shut up, do what you're told, etc. You're great in your ability to memorize and regurgitate other geniuses' stuff from 2,000 years ago or 100 or so years ago, but you're not really graded or encouraged to come up with your own innovative, original ideas. So it seems like there's just been this habit, this system in place of conformity, do what you're told. And I think a lot of people are getting tired of it, either because A, it's just getting boring, or maybe B, there's some kind of consciousness awakening going on, or maybe C, the consequences of being order follower are becoming so obvious in a world where the U.S. government is becoming increasingly highly centralized, where we see what appears to be this police state forming, where we have giant bank bailouts, where the taxpayer gets shafted while a handful of elites run off with taxpayer money. The consequences of being a slave, the consequences of not putting in the conscious effort to see the world for what it is, and no longer compromise your values and the state of your life because it's easier to work at a 9-to-5 job you hate with a comfortable, secure paycheck. That old paradigm is failing too many people, and I think it's more than just a trend, man. I think that people are becoming increasingly interested in seeing what they're capable of doing, pushing the limits of their potential to see what life could be like if they actually put an effort to cultivate a world, a life that reflects their values rather than just, passively obeying what other people tell them to. So I think on one level, there's a lot of people who are changing, but at the same time, there's some people who are okay. And that's one of the things I specified in that video, Quit Your Job, Do What You Love, is that if you love working a 9-to-5 job where you follow orders from the boss and your work is relatively predictable, not too difficult, not to think outside the box, nothing too crazy. If that's what you're happy with, then keep friggin' doing it. And there's nothing wrong with that. My video is not to say, oh, if you work a 9-to-5 job, you're a dumb slave. No, my video is if you work a 9-to-5 job and you frickin' hate it, there is an alternative. There's a way to go about it. It's not as bleak and impossible as society and culture may make you think. There for you to actually at least give it a shot, at least try. Sometimes it's better to fail than to live with that perpetual what if question in the back of your mind.
I read you. And, it reminds me there's a parallel here because, when we talk about the Borderless podcast, we talk about a number of subjects and people can misunderstand. I mean, I'm always saying, look, we're not trying to tell you to move out of the United States or your country if you don't want to. But what's sad is if you want to and you never do anything about it. And similarly, we had a local friend here, really great guy who we had somebody on at one point where we were talking about how many renunciations are going on in the United States. And he sent us an email saying, have you guys renounced? Well, why is it that you're promoting renouncing, if you haven't done it yourself? And, he just misunderstood. We're not promoting any of this, but we want to be there for people who are looking to break outside of their borders. And the same thing with you. If people are happy with their corporate job, keep it. I know it wasn't for me, and I'm glad I got out. Talk about slaves. I think you made mention of this on that video. Who's a slave, Chris?
Well, I don't know if I mentioned it in that video, but I certainly did mention it now. Slave is a harsh word, and I don't like to use it too often because it sounds too stuck up and elitist, and I don't think that's how you persuade. Slaves, I basically mean, if you think about the definition of slavery, it's being forced to do something you don't want to do. And I think that when you're working a job that you hate, and you have aspirations to do something, but you're not actually doing it, in a way, you are living the life of a slave. But at the same time, it's arguable that, you are the slave master, you are the slave owner, and you have the key to the shackles that are placed around your arms and your legs, and that you have the power to at least give your dreams a chance. Give those ambitions an opportunity to at least potentially come into fruition. And again, it goes back to that what if question. You don't want to be stuck with the what if. What if it would have worked? What if it hadn't worked? You'll never know until you try. So that's essentially what I mean by a slave. I don't mean it in the literal sense, but for a lot of people who work a job they freaking hate, a lot of times they probably think of themselves as slaves.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to ask you some more about kind of your YouTube channel. About how long have you had that?
I started it in early 2012, but I didn't really touch it for about the whole year. So really late 2012 is when I began focusing on it. Okay,
so about 3 years you've been focusing on it, and you built up a good audience. Well, that's pretty interesting. So I think that in one of your videos you said that consistency is kind of what you've seen as the key to your success there. How often do you have a schedule that you put out the videos? I mean, do you hold yourself to that, or do you just kind of put one out whenever you feel the inspiration? How do you stay consistent?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and this is particularly true when it comes to creative work. So if you work, let's say, at a gym and you do like physical training, if you're a physical trainer, this advice, these insights won't necessarily apply because that's more kind of a scheduled, kind of a repetitive job. Or if you work, let's say, again, like at a grocery store, people got to eat. So people are always going to be coming back. It's very robotic. It's very systematic. But creativity, which videos, not all of them, but a lot of them are more artistic. They have editing. Or they're just like spontaneous on the moment when I have an inspiration. For the first year and a half, 2 years of my blog, my philosophy was consistency. I read that book, Think and Grow Rich, which you guys may have heard of.
Of course.
It's like one of the most popular self-help books. And supposedly in the book, there's like some secret commonality between some of the world's wealthiest people throughout history. And this commonality is the thing that made them all successful. Well, the book doesn't actually tell you what the secret is. I guess it leaves it up to interpretation. But for what I interpreted is that the secret to success is consistency. It's commitment. It's sticking to what you want to accomplish, no matter how many setbacks and challenges come your way. And that was a philosophy that I followed, again, for about the first year or two of Red Pill. But over the past 6 months to a year, I've really changed that. And my approach now is to no longer force anything with Red Pill philosophy. And the more broader lesson is do not force creativity. do not force creativity. I found that when I try to force a video because I'm more interested in, oh my God, it's any videos, what if my subscribers start leaving? Or if I'm more interested in, oh, I got to make enough money off the YouTube ads, I better just pump out a bunch of videos. Or if I'm worried about getting a bunch of subscribers, whenever that is my reason for making a video, they often come out contrived. They don't feel authentic. They don't resonate the way the more authentic videos do. So my philosophy now is take that competitive, needy, scarcity-based feeling inside you, where you feel like, oh my, I gotta put out content, or I gotta, meet these deadlines. Creativity should have basically nothing to do with that. Creativity should be left for what it is when it comes out in its best form. And in my experience, that's when it's spontaneous, when it happens randomly, and when you're genuinely inspired from within and you just feel so passionate about it that you have to put it out. A good example of this recently was I released a video that got about 2 million views. It was going to get 2 million views in about 5 days. But then YouTube deleted it because they said it was hate speech. Of course, it was one of my anti-feminist videos. But it took me about 3 weeks to make that video. And I remember that I had the whole idea, the whole script, and I was very motivated and I was very excited to make this video. I'm like, this is going to be great. I absolutely want to make this video. And as I was creating the video, there were a few times over the first few days where I had that impulse again. I got to get this video out now. What if somebody else releases a similar video before me? I got to put it out now. My subscribers want it. Just this impulse to just got to get it out there, not because you're interested in the process of the creative work, but more because you're interested in the fruits of your work, the success, the popularity, the Twitter followers, the subscribers, the money, etc. But I've learned to put aside that impulse, aside, and just focus on the process. They say it's about the destination, not the journey. Very similar. So there were a couple times in the first few days where I kind of ran out of ideas with the video. Like I didn't know where to go next. And instead of pushing myself to get it done by the end of the day, I literally just stopped thinking about the video. And I wouldn't go back to the video for maybe 3 days when I suddenly had an idea or I suddenly had an inspiration, and I would go back to the video and I'd work on it. And instead of taking me 2 days to make it, it took me 3 weeks. But the end product was so much better, and that was reflected in the near 2 million views and all the publicity that video generated because of how controversial yet well edited and entertaining it was.
And this decision to not force creativity and to be you and to make sure that it's authentic is why my friend can't understand. I can't understand. Some guy is on YouTube and he just opens up his video camera and people watch it. It's because it's honest, it's real, and it's not like you say contrived. So with 8 million views and 40,000 subscribers, I mean, there's extraordinary potential there. Have you been able to harness that somehow and monetize this, Chris? Just give us an idea.
Yeah, I mean, bloggers, whether they're video bloggers or anybody who puts out creative content, there's so many options today. We have Patreon, which is basically it's almost like Kickstarter, but instead of for one big project, it's for tiny content release over the span of a week. So a lot of YouTubers, they've created a Patreon account. I haven't done that yet. I don't think it's the way for me to go. But the primary ways that I've monetized Red Pill Philosophy is through the YouTube ads. As you guys probably know, YouTube videos, most of them have little ads over them. You make a little bit of money off that, not too much. You got to get a ton of views to make any decent money off the YouTube ads. But I've again, some of my videos have gone pretty viral, so I made a good chunk of cash from some of those. But of course, I have to create other monetization avenues if I want this to be as sustainable of a blog as I want it to be. So aside from the YouTube ads, I've also created a members only option. So members are my most diehard fans who are interested in exclusive content, behind the scenes stuff, access to some of my past written books, basically the next level, you can become a Red Pill member, and you can pay as little as $3 a month. You can go up to 50, basically, whichever any price range you feel like contributing. And that's another monetization route I've chosen. Then, of course, I have the other things like selling T-shirts and selling books. So you have to kind of create different options, because it seems the economy as we live in it today, people need a reason to spend their money. Even if I have diehard fans who love my videos and watch them all, and they're the most committed fans in the world, and they think my videos have brought immense value to their lives, they won't give me a penny if I don't give them a reason to pay. So sometimes you got to give your clients a reason to pay, because a lot of people, they just want an excuse to spend the money they work hard for. So provide the shirt option, have books on sale, have the membership feature. Those are kind of the different ways that I've monetized it, and it's worked so far for me.
You know, and speaking of monetizing, I found the page on your website called The Red Pill, and I see a product there, and I thought, okay, is this a joke?
Yeah.
And I look at it, and I think, oh, he's selling red pills, and it's L-Theanine, which I've taken for years. And I've always looked at it as kind of like a form of natural Xanax or something. But I watched your video on it too a little while ago. So when did you discover L-Theanine, and what does it do for you, and what does science tell us it does to the brain?
L-Theanine is fascinating, and some people argue you can get the benefits of L-Theanine just by meditating, and that's essentially true. But some people prefer the supplement route. Some people just like taking supplements. So I provided that as an option for anybody who was interested. I personally recommend take the meditation route if you're going to do anything. But if you're into supplements, I first heard about L-Theanine when I began to take it. Somebody recommended it to me I've had anxiety in the past. And so somebody said, kind of like you said, it's almost like a Xanax, though that's kind of strong of a word, because, Xanax reminds me of, prescription drugs and all the crazy side effects. But, so I took it, and it's actually derived from green tea leaves, which, Buddhist monks have been using drinking green tea for thousands of years in accompaniment to their meditation. Essentially, what the studies have shown is that L-Theanine, it induces alpha brain waves in the brain. So the brain generates different waves associated with different mind states. Alpha is associated with feelings or state of mind of being calm and grounded, but also very clear-minded and alert. So you're not drowsy, but you still feel very calm. So to me, that's like God mode, honestly. I mean, to feel calm and grounded, yet very lucid and aware, that is God mode to me. So yeah, that's essentially what L-Theanine is. That's another monetization route that I've chosen. Not everybody's into it. Some people say you can just meditate and get the benefits, and I agree. But for anybody who likes supplements and enjoys taking supplements, it's an option. So yeah, that's the red pill.
Well, that's cool, Jonathan. So you take that every day?
I've got some. No, not every day. Oh. No, in fact, I might not have taken it. Since I've been in San Miguel for a year, I've maybe taken it a couple times. Okay. In fact, the stuff's probably getting old, but I used to take it more often.
Right. Yeah. Well, I do kind of a short meditation every day, so maybe they have L-Theanine.
We're not talking about marijuana, James. Come on. It's not those are not alpha brain waves. Or maybe they are. Yeah, I don't know.
All right. Well, it's really been great talking to you. I think that definitely we have kind of parallel messages that we put out. So I think that I hope that we can continue to kind of communicate with each other and that kind of thing. If you ever make it down to San Miguel de Allende, we'd be happy to show you around also. So right here in central Mexico.
Yeah. If I somehow ever end up in South America, I'll let you guys know.
South America?
No, we're in central Mexico.
Dude, get your geography right.
But Central Mexico. Okay, I got you. Yeah, I'm actually geographically retarded, actually.
Well, how old are you, by the way, Chris, real quick?
I am 27.
Holy cow! You gotta be kidding me. I figured you might be as young as 32, but I figured you were older. Oh, well, congratulations, man. Job well done. 27 years old. Holy shit, you're the same age as my daughter. Oh, my God. Okay.
Yeah, it's a good age, I suppose.
James has a question he likes to ask.
Yeah. So there's usually one question that we like to wrap up the interviews with. And we've kind of already shared the secret of consistency. So we'll go, other than that, I guess we'll stick with the YouTube channel. If somebody wants to start a YouTube channel or something like that, other than consistency, what would you say is the best piece of advice that you would give them?
Believe it or not, as I mentioned earlier, I think consistency matters. But if your channel is going to be one that's based on creative work, where you need to be inspired to come up with something, whether it's a song or you want to rant about things that annoy you, you can't. Nothing beats authenticity when we're talking about creative work. So to me, more important than consistency is making sure that whatever channel you're going to start, if you're going to start a YouTube channel, you do it on something that genuinely interests you. And let consistency be a byproduct of the fact that you are 24/7 obsessed with whatever you're going to be creating content on your channel. Because in my experience, it's not worth forcing creativity. It's just not worth it. It comes out contrived. It doesn't come out the same. To me, it was just draining. It was just draining to put so much effort into editing a video, not because I wanted to, because I was obsessed with the process itself, because I was obsessed with the destination, with what are the fruits of my actions, rather than just loving the journey itself. So do something, at least find something that you're passionate about. You got to have something that makes you angry or makes you excited, and then start making content on that. And, don't worry too much about your subscriber count. Try to put that crap aside. Honestly, in my experience, it just gets in the way. It inhibits the quality of the content that you put out, which ultimately the quality of the content is going to be the primary thing, even more important than consistency. The quality of the content is going to attract subscribers and gets you money and gets you the Twitter followers and just the overall following that you're interested in getting in order to monetize your passions. So, creativity and a genuine desire to create the work, that trumps consistency in my experience.
So we've been talking with Chris Delamo of redpillphilosophy.com. Most of you probably know him very well. The rest of you who don't think you know him, I bet you've seen some of his videos. Go to redpillphilosophy.com and check out his website. It'll link you over to his YouTube page. We're going to have a lot of show notes on this too as well. So thank you very much, Chris Delamo, for coming on the Borderless podcast.
Thank you guys so much.
All right. Well, I am really appreciative of Chris Delamo for coming on the podcast. I've watched his videos a lot. I know he was a younger guy. I didn't think he was 27. It doesn't matter. The point is, the guy is straight up. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think that's some important points he was making about authenticity. I was just listening to an interview with Neil Strauss, who wrote The Game and Emergency and all these best-selling books. And funny thing is, he was saying exactly the same thing. He was saying that in today's world, you got to be authentic. And it's even more important than, being niched down and making sure that you only talk about one specific thing, that, people are interested in you. And, if you have a certain thing that you want to talk about and get off your chest, then as long as it's authentic, then go ahead and do it.
Right. So we've got some visitors coming in at some point here soon, right?
Yeah. And next week, we got Callan Diggs and a friend of mine, Alistair. Mm-hmm. So, it should be a lot of fun. A lot of people coming down. Looks like another 2 the month after that. So
yeah, and I've got my buddy Ryan coming in from Arizona. He's a very interesting character.
Yeah,
he is somebody you'll have some really deep conversations with. Maybe I'll have him say hi on the podcast that week. We'll see. So what we want you to do, please, we read to you some of the nice things people had to say. I think we've got 49 reviews right now on iTunes. So if you wouldn't mind, please go over there and leave us a review and rate us. Give us 5 stars if you would. And, 4 stars is all right. That's fine. And subscribe to us on iTunes as well. And go to borderlesspodcast.com. James, what happens there?
Yeah, you go to borderlesspodcast.com. You're going to see a lot of podcasts that we've done in the past and blog posts. And right at the top, you got a big button that says Instant Access. And that'll get you a ebook to help you if you're thinking about, moving or traveling to another place. It's got some online resources that also give you access to the Facebook group. And and then you'll get the emails and you'll get notified when we have new shows coming out.
All right. And so thanks for joining us. Another Borderless podcast coming up soon.
Thanks for joining us for the Borderless Podcast, traveling, investing, and living beyond borders.